All right, let's do it live.
So if fire suppression makes fires worse, then why do we do it? Well, wildfires are big business. And cousin, business is a boomin'. When you hear that the California wildfires cost billions of dollars, it's not like they just burned a stack of money. That money went somewhere. Every helicopter in the sky costs a lot of money. In fact, it's around 10 grand an hour. And the air tankers are even more. Every retardant drop from a VLAT costs north of $65,000 per bust. And they drop that shit like the expiration date is tomorrow. The Forest Service spends nearly $100 million a year on retardant. And it all goes to one private company. Fire aviation costs millions of dollars every day in peak fire season. And many of the ships are contracted out by private companies. They even have a 747. Thousands of miles of hose get used up every year. In 2020, they had a nationwide fire hose shortage. Every lunch, every Gatorade, marked up to government cost. The California Department of Corrections has a great racket. They use cheap prison labor to manufacture their equipment, but they bill at government cost. Why? Well, why not? It's not their money. It's yours. And it's not just the suppression costs. Destruction means transactions. How much money does a hardware store make off your house if it's just sitting there year after year? Well, how much money do you think they make when it burns to the ground? You think the car salesmen are distraught that they have to sell thousands of brand new cars every year because the ones they just sold you all burned up in a wildfire? Every burned out car means a new one is sold. Every leveled house means a new one is built. Contractors, labor, permits, building supplies, furniture, wiring, utilities. Every power pole has to be replaced by men working overtime with hazard pay. The wildfire industrial complex is a $12 billion a year industry in California alone. That's bigger than porn. And in a way, it is porn. Media clowns flock to wildfires like moths to a flame. They plant themselves in front of a raging headfire for the cool shot, and then have to run for their lives when it outflanks them. They overhype the intensity of the incidents for their fire porn, staging shots to heighten the drama for their unsuspecting viewers, doing multiple takes to get the ominous tone just right. Oftentimes, you'll find more fire pornographers than firefighters. And they cheer when homes burn up, and are visibly disappointed when a neighborhood is saved. They really only profit when their life has been destroyed on camera. Sometimes the firefighters like to tease the pornographers by pretending to do some hotlining, to trick them into racing over and raising their cameras. Talking heads with all the gravitas of an underwear model will cry out loud that everything you are seeing is unprecedented. It's not. There is no new kind of magical fire behavior that didn't exist before.
We'll do it live. Okay. No. We'll do it live. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
Thing does suck. Man, oh man, does that clip from Hot Shot, is that an evergreen clip or what? The wildfire industrial complex is going the way of the military industrial complex. And the thing is, when I made that film and I cut that scene, you'll notice I said it's a $12 billion a year industry in California alone. We got to bump that up. Just like 2 years later, now it's $200 billion. $200 billion now. The vultures continue to pluck at the carcass of both the Palisades and Altadena. Right now, as if it couldn't get worse, as if people didn't have enough of a reason to hate Gavin Newsom. So first off, the Palisades fire starts on Topanga State Park, right? You have this overgrown field that Gavin Newsom failed to clear and protect the community. Then fire burns out everything. And then he's taking photo ops while people are actively burning alive. Campaign photo ops for this. Then he lies about the homeless housing that they're forced to build. It is mandatory, right? In the footprint of the Palisades, they're going to build homeless housing. Now we have FireAid. We have FireAid. So now, what is FireAid? FireAid was that fundraiser that all the celebrities did for the LA fires. Seems relatively benign, right? It's to be expected when you have an affluent community like the Palisades, which is itself full of a lot of celebrities. It's not just that, but yeah, it stands to reason that they're going to get their friends together. There's a lot of very talented, famous people in LA who can put on a performance, raise a ton of money. All good, right? Okay, maybe it's not all good. Now, they raised about $100 million, and there are accusations now that it's a scam. There are accusations the money is not going to the fire victims. There are further accusations that Gavin Newsom is politically connected to some of the nonprofit organizations that are involved. As if people didn't have enough of a reason to hate this guy. Now, the question becomes, is this true? Right? There are a lot of stories swirling on and on about everything Palisades fire related. Some of them seem more fantastical than others, but man, is this one actually true? Is this true? I'm curious what you guys have heard. So now let's pull up the actual story. Okay. This is the headline, is that there's an accusation that this money is not going to the victims. Let me pull up this video. Stand by real quick. Let's replace this. We're going to pull up the video. We have the news story. Oh, you will see me thrive. Okay. Sounding a little flat. Holy shit. That's pretty bad without auto-tune. All right, let me mute my mic. We're going to watch the news story because I think it's important. This is important that we give a fair shake to this whole thing, right? Because a lot of accusations get thrown out. So remember, the accusation is that FireAid raised $100 million and the money's not going to victims. Let's hear their side of the story from this news report that was clearly planted by the organization. But look, they deserve to have their day in court. Of course, right? The court of public opinion. So let me mute my mic and we'll listen to Katy Perry's flat singing. Sorry, my dad has perfect pitch, and I don't think I have perfect pitch, but it's close. And so when I hear this, it's like nails on a chalkboard. If someone is even just this flat, it's. Oh, you will see me thrive.
Remember the FireAid concerts? They raised $100 million for fire victims. And tonight, we now know where a big chunk of that money is going. Concert producers revealed today they are sending $50 million to a long list of local nonprofit agencies that will help victims. KCAL News reporter Leslie Marin has the story.
We're talking about $50 million going to more than 100 local organizations. These organizations are doing everything from helping displaced families, displaced workers, to providing legal aid, some even helping in the rebuilding process. Tonight, we spoke to two nonprofits to learn about what they're doing right now to help the people most impacted.
So exciting.
A burst of joy as the LA-based organization.
Just a side note, this lady's salary is $169,000 a year.
Sense of Home finds out they'll be able to continue providing hope for hundreds of displaced families.
One of the recipients said the other day, like, I'm so busy just trying to get a new social security card and my driver's license that to be able to think about furnishing a home, I can't even.
Since 2015, the nonprofit has helped furnish and build homes for former foster youth. When the fires hit, they started a new initiative, Home Bank LA, doing the same thing for people who lost everything.
But we have over 400 applicants already. So we're going to be ramping up to several homes per day.
And it's not cheap. Each home can cost up to $4,000 to fill. But with the help of this FireAid grant, they're one step closer to helping everyone who needs it.
So it's like a really fun environment to like design a home and then get to meet these amazingly inspiring people who are just so resilient and hopeful.
Sense of Home is just one community-based organization that will receive more than $100,000 in grant money. FireAid officials announced Tuesday that nearly 100 organizations will benefit from nearly $50 million raised during the star-studded concert.
We had over 90% of our families displaced, so a lot of them not only lost their home, they lost their jobs.
The Family's Forward Learning Center in Pasadena is hoping to use the grant money to help more than 100 families and children, many who are immigrant, that currently use their center. During the first days following the Inc. fire, they set up a distribution center. But now families need long-term help.
Right now, what we're seeing is a lot of these families need to find their way back. If they were displaced, they have to secure housing. If they secure housing, they need furnishings.
The nonprofit is now helping pay for furniture and also security deposits when needed, along with providing care for so many young children every day.
We provide the map for guidance for them to be able to do the steps that are needed to come out of a catastrophe like this.
Now, this is just the first round of distribution when it comes to these grants. FireAid officials say another one will follow shortly after all these are distributed by the end of the month. Reporting from Pasadena, Leslie Marin, KCAL News.
Interesting. So that's the story, according to CBS News. That's the story. That a bunch of celebrities raised $100 million, and it's being distributed to these nonprofits who are doing this wonderful work. Now, the question becomes, is it wonderful work? Let's look at some of these NPOs. Now, I know the Community Brigade, they're great. But guys, look at how many NPOs are getting money from the grants from FireAid. Look at this. Look at that. Now, the way that they're portraying this is like, look, these are just lots of good organizations and they're just here doing the work. Now, we got to talk about charity. Let's talk about charity really quick. Because, look, man, the Bible commands us that we don't talk about charity, right? It's like Fight Club. First rule of charity is you don't talk about charity because your reward is not supposed to be here on earth, and you're supposed to be doing it for the right reasons. The question becomes, are they doing it for the right reasons? Are people giving to charity for the right reasons? Now, what's the second rule of Fight Club, Charity Fight Club? What's the second rule of Charity Fight Club? Don't give to California charities. Do not give to California charities. Now, why would I say that? Why would I say that? There's a man named Alex Villanueva. Now, I met him a few years back when I shot this commercial for him, which for my money, and my homeboy Phil Donlin directed it. For my money, this is the best political commercial that's ever been made. What a badass. Now, Sheriff Villanueva is a very decent man. I got to know him working on this spot. And one of the things that he shared with us was some of the down and dirty about the homeless industrial complex in Los Angeles. You ever wonder why this problem never gets better? Right? Gavin Newsom has made this his #1 priority for like 2 decades, right? When he was mayor in San Francisco, when he was lieutenant governor, now that he's governor, it never gets better. And you have to ask yourself, well, why not? Now, Sheriff Villanueva, he's a great dude. He's an old school Democrat. You know, he's a little bit of a bleeding heart, honestly, which is kind of surprising for a sheriff. But he was so unfairly maligned by the absolutely disgraceful Los Angeles Times with so much BS propaganda. It was so unfair. This guy's like an Air Force veteran. He's a professor. He made such positive changes to the department. And when he was in charge, he actually did a lot of good with helping to clean up the homeless. And it wasn't just about getting rid of them. He would hire barbers to come down to these homeless site cleanups and cut their hair to try to set them up for success and groom them so they could go on job interviews, for example. It's just like one tiny example of the stuff he was doing. Now, one of the things that he shared with us was part of the problem are these NPOs, these nonprofit organizations that help the homeless, okay? And the thing that he told us was that he could have Mother Teresa herself shepherding 100 homeless people to a shelter, and they would not take them. They would not take them. Mother Teresa herself could bring them in. They won't take them. Why? They have to go through a bridge group. They have to go through a nonprofit organization who then will determine where they go. And these bridge groups, they get like $3,500 per head. Homeless services in Los Angeles are coordinated through what's called the Coordinated Entry System, CES, which aims to efficiently and equitably distribute resources. People experiencing homelessness in Los Angeles typically go through an intake and assessment process to be connected to housing and services within the CES rather than directly entering shelters. So what he was saying is true. At first, I was a little skeptical, but this is true. Homeless people can't just go to a shelter. They have to be filtered through CES, which is basically a conglomerate of nonprofit organizations. Sheriff Villanueva said that it actually doesn't matter if they just immediately leave. These bridge groups could just bring them back the next day and then continue to make more money off of it. This is why the problem never gets better, because it is profitable, even for an NPO. And we'll see how that works. Now, Sheriff Villanueva said that he sent some of his deputies into this one structure that's in Santa Monica. This is like prime real estate, ocean view property. There were more cats than residents. Because of course, for a lot of homeless people, they choose not to go to a shelter because they would have to give up their drugs and alcohol. They don't want to do that. There's more cats than residents. The thing to understand about these nonprofit organizations, and I keep doing the Dr. Evil quotes, he showed us this spreadsheet of the executive salaries of some of these bridge groups through which wizards are required to go before they can go to a shelter. Some of these people are making $750,000 a year. $750,000 a year. So it's mandated that homeless people have to go through these NPOs to get help to go to a shelter. That changed back in 2013. You cannot just take a homeless person to a shelter. You have to go through this laundering system. And the executives at these NPOs that are helping the homeless are making $750,000 a year. Now, does that seem unbelievable? President and Chief Executive Officer salary at the Bridge Homeless Recovery Center. Oh, what's this? $689,000 a year. I don't make that much money. I have a profitable movie. I don't make that much money. Holy shit. It says that the Bridge Homeless Recovery Center typically ranges, the salary for the CEO at the Bridge Homeless Recovery Center typically range from $524,000 to $879,000, reflecting the diverse roles within the company. Holy shit. And this is all for a product that's not being delivered, right? They're not fixing the homeless problem. And yet they're getting paid upwards of $879,000, $724 per year. Oh, it gets worse. San Francisco gave these homeless nonprofits nearly $2 billion, and the salaries of their execs might surprise you. Or will they? $2 billion. Right? So whenever you hear Gavin Newsom talking about we're putting more money into solving the homelessness crisis, it's bullshit. They're putting it into these NPOs, and their executives are making $750,000, $800,000. Now, look, you got to pay people, okay? If you have organizations that are ostensibly there to help people, you got to pay their salaries. There's going to be overhead costs. There's going to be organizational costs. They're going to, properties, office space. People need to pay their rent. That's fine. It's totally understandable that not 100% of your charitable donation is going to go directly to the intended recipients, right? Because you've got all this overhead, but a lot of these NPOs are shaving off 70% of the funds for themselves. But hey, look, maybe these executives are just so talented, they're so good that they deserve $750,000 a year. Oh, what's this? A corruption probe. Homeless shelter execs make huge salaries and hire family members? What? The Department of Homeless Services say it's cut ties with 3 nonprofits cited in the report, and we're seeking corrective measures from at least 2 others. That sounds like a racket. They're hiring family. Look, maybe these family members, I support family business. My wife and I work together. Maybe they're just that good. Maybe that's all it is. Now, this article goes on to say that the seemingly respectable veneer of charity, and that's what it is, not only masks big salaries, it also shrouds self-dealing and nepotism. Some shelter operators have channeled city money for meals, security, and repairs into for-profit companies that they or their relatives control. You see that shell game that they're playing, right? Talk about how, look, these orgs, they are going to have overhead, but what they're doing is some of that overhead for a nonprofit organization is being filtered out to a for-profit company that they or their family members also run. It said those lucrative services account indirectly for a major portion of the city's spending on the homelessness. Now, this is in New York, so it shows it's not just LA, right? This is the whole NPO scam. One landlord set up a nonprofit that spent millions on real estate and maintenance businesses that he and his family owned. The shelter operator was charged earlier this year with laundering kickbacks through a family-run consulting firm. Now, we're talking about homelessness right now, but you got to stick with me for this, okay? It's all going to make sense in a bit, how this relates to FireAid. Now, let's talk about this bridge group organization, the Coordinated Entry System for Los Angeles. Now, this is the system that Sheriff Villanueva was talking about. In 2013, they changed the way that homeless help works, right? They changed the way how we help homeless people get into homeless shelters. It says traditionally, public housing authorities and individual providers managing tenant-based programs decide whom to serve based on eligibility criteria established by funders, service provider partners, and the housing project. To fill vacancies, housing projects either use a first-come, first-serve approach, or they selected from clients already engaged in services offered by the project sponsor or service partner. Coordinated entry works differently. A CES uses a universal assessment and prioritization approach, meaning that the needs of every person experiencing homelessness is assessed and prioritized using the same schema, regardless of which agency he or she has already accessed. So it doesn't matter if Sheriff Villanueva's deputies help them. Doesn't matter if, like he said, Mother Teresa herself tries to bring them in. They have to get filtered through these NPOs that have a public-private partnership. Regardless of which agency he or she has already accessed, individuals are then referred to the most appropriate housing resource to meet the identified level of need. Who's determining which of these businesses, these NPOs, is getting the referral? Who's monitoring this stuff? Coordinated entry is a significant change both for providers of housing and services programs and for those experiencing homelessness. I'm sure it really, really helps the wizards. So now you've got this middleman, right? You have this middleman agency that was established by the LA Homeless Services Authority, LAHSA. Now, it's interesting that we should mention this agency. LAHSA has faced scrutiny regarding contracts awarded to organizations where the CEO's spouse is employed, leading to concerns about potential conflicts of interest despite claims of recusal from such matters. LAist, for instance, reported that Valencia Adams Kellum, the CEO of LAHSA, signed contracts worth $2.1 million with a nonprofit that employs her husband as director of operations and compliance, despite previous claims of being completely recused from such dealings. Now, again, maybe he's just the best guy for the job. Maybe it just so happens that the administrator of this public entity, LAHSA, it just happens that look, birds of a feather. They're both into helping the homeless. Maybe he just happens to be the best man for the job. Or it's a fucking fraud. What do you think? What do you guys think? Now, why are we talking about these wizard NPOs? I thought we were talking about FireAid. Well, it is. I'm going to get to how all of these things are connected, but you have to first understand this NPO shell game and the way that it works. Like I said, this isn't just Los Angeles. It's not just LA. This is the entire scheme, right? It's this entire industry that's sort of taken over this NPO shell game that they do. Now that we understand how it works, how nonprofits are still paying their executives insane money, $750,000 a year, $1 million a year. They are outsourcing projects to their spouses. Now that we understand how this works, let's go back to FireAid specifically. Now, FireAid, it's weird. This is the LA fires. There's no shortage of infrastructure in Los Angeles, but for some reason, FireAid is brought to us by a Pennsylvania firm. FireAid was administered by a Pennsylvania-based NPO called the Annenberg Foundation. Like there was nobody in Southern California who could do this. The foundation is a Pennsylvania-based nonprofit that has a rather small charitable footprint. That is a polite way of saying. According to Lee, who's reporting on this, the foundation allocates just 33% of its annual expenses towards charity. 33%. The rest reportedly goes to administrative costs, right? So that's those fat salaries, which includes executive pay. For example, Cynthia Kennard, executive director of the Annenberg Foundation, earns nearly 7 figures per year in both salary and bonuses. Dude, everything that Sheriff Villanueva said is true. These people are making like $750,000 a year. And they're only getting 33% of what you donated. Only 33% of what you donate is actually meeting the recipients. You are paying these salaries. This is unbelievable. Now, just because the organization that's running FireAid pays their executive nearly $1 million a year doesn't mean that it's all a scam, right? Now, they've already dispersed, I think this is actually outdated. They say they've dispersed $50 million to these groups. I think it's at 75 million now. Now, the way that they defend not giving this money to the actual victims is they say that the selected organizations they're giving to have the infrastructure, experience, and relationships necessary to efficiently and equitably I hate that word, deliver assistance to fire impacted individuals and have each received 100 grand or more. Now, look, I think this is actually pretty fair, right? You could just give everybody 10 grand. When you look at the broad spectrum of victims between the Eaton fire and the Palisades fire, we're talking about tens of thousands of people. And if you were to take that $100 million and just cut everybody a check, what are they getting? Like 5 grand, 10 grand, maybe 20 grand? Maybe you only give it out to the people who are, don't have like a $5 million net worth or something like that. I don't know. But there is something to be said for, hey, we're gonna try to channel this money to organizations who spend every single day working to deliver furniture, remediate asbestos, provide meals or transportation to and from schools because everybody's displaced now. That's fair because if that's your job as an organization, you have relationships where maybe you can get things for cheap, right? You have the infrastructure in place that you can help distribute this stuff. But who are these people? Who are these people? Here are the recipients of the grant money again. Look at all this. Now the question just becomes, of that $100 million that was raised allegedly for the victims, can individuals just get access to that? Well, they actually answer this in their FAQ page. Does FireAid award grants to individuals directly? Yes. Through local nonprofits. Does this sound familiar? Does this sound familiar? The only way that a victim can get any of this money from FireAid is if it's filtered through a local nonprofit, who we've seen in many cases is shaving 70%, close to 70% off that transaction. Guys, does this sound familiar? Does this sound like exactly what Sheriff Villanueva was warning us about with these bridge groups? Is this not the exact same thing where they're forcing you to have a middleman and then that middleman is shaving 70% of the money off of it? Now, I don't want to just blanket say that all of these people, all of these organizations are shaving 70%, right? We're taking some of the most egregious offenders. I mean, look how many organizations there are in here, right? And a lot of them could be doing great work, absolutely great work. They could be maximizing the amount of donations. So I don't want to slam everybody for this, right? Like I said, some of these I actually know, and they're great. Some of these are great, okay? So we can't paint with a broad brush. But this whole concept that in order for a victim to actually get direct assistance, it has to go through a local nonprofit. We've established this middleman, and it's exactly like that system that deals with the homeless industrial complex. Right. So what you see is this isn't just a homeless industrial complex or a wildfire industrial complex. It's just the NPO industrial complex. So now, why did we spend so much time talking about wizards? This is about FireAid. I thought this was about the Palisades fire. Why did we spend so much time at the top of this live stream talking about homeless people and homeless NPOs shaving money? Remember this? Remember our live stream about how they are going to replace properties in the Palisades with high density homeless housing? This isn't speculation. It's required by law. We covered this. It is required by law that the Palisades rebuild with homeless housing. It's mandated. Governor Newsom unveils $101 million to build Palisades low-income housing. Isn't it interesting that it's $100 million, basically the exact same amount that they raised for FireAid? This developer, who inherited the Shell gas station in the Palisades, plans to build as many as 100 apartments on the lot of the burned-out gas station, right? 100 housing units in the footprint of a gas station. Think of the money. You're getting 100 rents in the footprint of a gas station. So they are going to be putting more wizard housing in the Palisades. You are getting it from all angles. So not only are these NPOs filtering off your charitable donations, sometimes to the tune of 70% of the dollars that you donate, they're skimming off to executive salaries that are $750,000, pushing $1 million a year. And what are they going to do in the Palisades? Well, they're going to build homeless housing, where they're going to perpetuate this homeless industrial complex, where public employees are furnishing kickbacks to their spouses through these charitable donations, because everything has to have a middleman. You see this? They've perfected this. They've perfected this process. Does FireAid grant awards to individuals? Through local nonprofits. Through local nonprofits. Everything has to go through them. You see how they've done this? They're going to do it again. They're going to do it again. It's like the American economy has just been hollowed out to this husk of grifters. It's like we don't produce anything original anymore. We don't have any manufacturing left. And so all we have is just an economy of grifters. And you have these college students who get a worthless degree and they go join an NPO, the Helping the Homeless NPO in Santa Monica, and they're making six figures by just shaving off like 70% of the charitable donations or the taxpayer funded money that Gavin Newsom is pumping into this stuff. This isn't Newsom's money. This is your money. And these NPOs who are filtering this money off to their own spouses and themselves are making executive salaries pushing $1 million a year. They're getting your money. They're getting your money. So this isn't just about FireAid. This is about the whole NPO fraud. All of this is a shell game. Stay on alert, guys. Thanks for joining. I think you guys should go and rewatch the stream that we did about this topic in particular, how the Palisades is mandated to build wizard housing during the rebuild. They're mandated to. They have to do it. And you're going to see that this homeless industrial complex that Sheriff Villanueva warned us about, it's just going to grow. It's going to grow. And that's why it never gets solved. It never gets solved. And this is the paradox. This is the conundrum. Anytime you create an agency, the Department of Solving Things, that thing is guaranteed not to get solved, right? Look at the salaries of these people. So if you are making $750,000 a year as an executive of a homeless charity, why would you ever fix the problem? You're getting paid $750,000 to address the problem. If you fix that problem, how can you justify getting paid anymore, right? This is the problem. Anytime you set up any kind of agency to fix the problem, now you have people whose livelihood depends on that problem existing for them to fix. And so it'll never get fixed. It'll only grow. So anyone who's confused as to why these problems keep getting worse, why do the fires keep getting worse? Why does the homeless problem keep getting worse? Because there's no money in the cure, right? It's just like the pharmaceutical industry. It's all bullshit. It's bad for you. So anyway, Sheriff Villanueva was right. So you should reelect him. He's running again for sheriff. He's a good man. Fully endorse him. LA needs him. All right, guys. I'm going to be back later with some more streams. We're going to talk about how the Palisades fire could have been prevented. Could have been prevented.